There was kind of two minds at the time. One mind was get rid of them, burn them down, and then Kenai Historical Society found out about it. And they said, no, let's restore them, save them, and move them, and make a little park out of it. So that's what they did. The unique things in here that I always try to point out is the 48 star flag. He had a large family. Him and his wife Katie had 7 children that lived in here. And he was a really fine builder, and a lot of people can really tell as soon as you come in here it's much quieter. He was just really skilled at building the Scandinavian style cabin. And they did build this with the intention of using the upstairs. It's one of the buildings that is an exception to the not using the upstairs.
Because it's solidly built.
Yeah, and he just knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And with 9 people in here, you'd need that space. We have showcased it to be just a store, because once the canneries came up here in the late 1800s, like 1898 and stuff like that, they started fishing like crazy. And it was schooners that came up, and the people that worked out there were Filipino and Chinese. And the people here, they gathered the fish and fished, and then we'd break them and get them out there. And as a result of those schooners coming up and the cannery coming up, it opened the availability of having dry goods brought up, and metal and stoves and coffee grinders and you name it. All sorts of stuff started showing up. This is all just a collection of things from the local community. People gave us stuff to decorate with. So this cabin, the Miller cabin, was built in 1910 by Emil Ness, and I'm pretty sure he was an Alaskan Native man. And at one point he decided he wanted to move to Kenai in 1930, so he took his cabin completely apart, which is a 19-foot by 30-foot cabin, huge for the day.
Yeah. Really?
And he put it on a barge, it floated it up to Kenai, and then reconstructed it. Now the family that we feature is George Miller's family, and his wife Fiona, who was an Athabascan Kenai, and she was the local midwife and healer. She was a beloved member of her community. All the women here were cousins, sisters, that all lived in these houses. They were all related. Because this was such a small community. But her granddaughter, who lived with her in this house, she is in her mid to late 80s. Her name is Evelyn. She decorated this cabin in honor of her grandmother. And she grew up living in this house with her, not because there was any problems in the family, but because she loved her grandma and loved living with her. The village really does raise the child, and if you like living with grandma better, you can go live with grandma, you know? And that's kind of what Evelyn did. Now, one of the things that was really unique about Fiona was she loved company. Everybody loved company, but she loved it so much she always had her table set just like this. Every day, just in case somebody stopped by.
Hoping somebody came.
Yeah, and she would serve you fresh bread, and she would give you tea, and if there was leftover salmon, she might give you some of that, dried salmon. But if she didn't have any bread left over from the day, she'd give you pilot bread, which was introduced to the Native community as we blended with them. I'm trying to find the right word. But anyway, her granddaughter's featured in this picture. If you're a fisher person, there's an original king salmon that used to be huge. They're not anymore, and we're actually losing our population. But everything in here else represents Fiona. So she wrote a little story about berry picking. It's in her native language as well as English. The picture of this man, Stefan, is her father. And this is a fine example of an Alaska Native man who became Russian through the introduction. Fiona was she was very willing to learn the ways of the Westerns, and so she learned how to crochet, quilt, sew. All Alaska Natives know how to sew, the women do in particular, because they all made their own clothing. They didn't wear anything but fur originally until they had access to cloth and stuff that came from the Western cultures that came in here. But her granddaughter's greatest wish is for me to express to everybody that Alaskan Native peoples are fully human.
Of course.
And that they're just as loving and as supportive of family as any other community. And it was used to help construct the Alaska Alcan.
Yep.
And when it was finished with that, then it became a fishing boat, and it was used on the beaches to collect the fish from the various people who were getting them and take them to the place where they took them out to the canneries. It's a cool old 6-wheeled truck. And we got it donated because it was getting vandalized. Those gunshots are from vandals, you know. It's a really cool old truck though.
It is.
Anyway, this plow is not time representative, but we were given it and we put it out because once they got pack animals here, initially you could not bring pack animals here and expect them to survive the winter. You might bring them, but you would eat them by fall. We don't know when it was built. We have no idea who lived in it. But this is really the typical little cabin that you'll see. They all had thatched roof normally, or just some wood. And you'll find them all over just kind of sinking back into nature.
Yeah.
And this one we have decorated to represent the single bachelor. And so this is where you would live. After you got into the community, you would cut all the trees down the first year, let them dry for a year, and then you would build yourself a little home. You know, because this community area had been inhabited by the Kenai for and Kenai-Athabascan people for 500 plus years. Most of the big game they had to go to Caribou Hills and or Cooper Landing. And they got there by snowshoeing and skiing. The man who built the Red House built a whole bunch of little tiny cabins, probably littler than this, in between these locations. So that you had a place to go and stay while you were snowshoeing, because you couldn't tent in those days. But if they were doing trapping expeditions, they would stay in these little cabins for a week or two, or however long they needed to. And then eventually, if it was all furs they were doing, then they would go up to Anchorage and then sell their furs at the Fur Rendezvous in February. Now, and no road to Kenai till 51, so you had to walk to the turnoff where Seward is before you could access a road to get up to Anchorage. And you could still go to Seward, but you had to, it was all done on foot from that turnoff to here.
Didn't you use dog teams or anything like that?
No, the dog teams are not known. They got their mail from dog teams in the wintertime from Seward and sometimes Homer. It was really inconsistent, but it did happen. No, the Athabascans are not known as dog team owners.
Okay.